All right, let's set the scene here. I want you to step into the steel-toed boots of a seasoned project manager for just a minute. Picture this. You're walking onto a pristine, freshly cleared construction site. You've got the blueprints tucked under your arm, the sun is shining, and your contract clearly states you'll be handing over the keys in exactly 12 months. Sounds pretty great, right? Fast forward, though, and suddenly you're staring down the barrel of a 3-year nightmare. The site's a total mess, the client is absolutely furious, and your budget is blown to pieces. So what on earth happened? Well, in this explainer, we're taking a boots-on-the-ground tour of a failing project site to uncover why things go so spectacularly wrong. We're pulling straight from expert field data to anatomize what we like to call the 12-month mirage.
Okay, let's dive right into this timeline. It is wild how a pristine paper schedule can just distort into absolute chaos in a matter of months. At month 1, hey, everything seems fine, but the seeds of disaster are already planted right there with unrealistic planning. Then, boom, month 6 hits, you're right in the thick of the build, and a massive cash flow crisis rears its ugly head. Month 12, the day you were supposed to be popping champagne for the grand opening, comes and goes, and the building is barely half finished. And finally, around month 36, the actual completion limps across the finish line. Now, when this happens, human nature kicks in, right? Everyone immediately blames the contractor. They're the easiest target. But our source material shows us that the real root causes are far deeper, way more complex, and frankly structurally embedded in the project from day one.
So, we have to ask the big question here. Why do 12-month projects actually take 3 long years? To answer this, we're completely bypassing the usual cliches. We're not just going to point fingers at some bad weather or a grumpy foreman. Instead, we're diving into the top 5 actual root causes of project delays.
Let's kick things off with cause number 1. It's famously known in the industry as the mother of many delays. We're talking about poor planning and unrealistic scheduling. The incredibly painful truth is that projects often lose massive amounts of time before the very first shovel even hits the dirt. Think about it. If your foundation of planning is completely rotten, the actual physical foundation of your building honestly doesn't stand a chance.
It's like a brutal head-on collision between boardroom fantasies and actual site reality. On one hand, you have this incredibly weak baseline schedule and an overly aggressive contract duration that just looks fantastic to executives. But out in the dirt, it's a totally different story. You're facing poor resource planning and literally zero risk assessment. When that gritty site reality gets completely ignored just to push through an unrealistic contract, well, our fictional project site is doomed from day one. You simply can't magically compress a 3-year complex build into 12 months just because the paperwork says you should. Moving on to cause number 2, and I absolutely love the way our source text puts this. A project without cash is like a car without fuel. Seriously, you could have the most expensive, beautifully engineered sports car in the entire world, but with an empty gas tank, it's really just a heavy piece of metal sitting in your driveway. The exact same rule applies out on the site. Without cash flow, the entire operation becomes instantly paralyzed.
Let's walk through the devastating narrative of how this actually plays out. On our site, it's essentially a domino effect. Step 1 usually starts with a delayed approval on an IPC, an interim payment certificate. Step 2, because that paperwork is stuck in limbo, the client delays the actual payment. Step 3, suddenly the contractor's budget runs dangerously short. They just don't have the operating capital to keep things moving. Which leads straight to Step 4, arguably the absolute worst day on any job site. Workers go unpaid, and all that expensive, heavy machinery just sits there idle. A single piece of delayed paperwork essentially starves the physical site of the oxygen it needs to survive.
Now, what's really interesting about this next issue is that it isn't just some local, isolated problem. It's widely recognized as one of the biggest causes of delays worldwide. We are talking about cause number 3, design changes and variation orders, or VOs as we usually call them. You know, even if you have stellar planning and perfectly flowing cash, this specific issue can still completely blindside your management team.
So, what does this look like when you're standing out there in the mud? Well, maybe the client suddenly completely changes their mind about a layout. Or, worse, critical design errors are only discovered once you're actually trying to build the thing. We also see major omissions in the bill of quantities, or sudden, unexpected demands to expand the project's scope. And the ultimate result of all these chaotic changes? Rework. You're literally tearing down what you just spent weeks building just to start all over again. I mean, that is every site manager's worst nightmare, right? It traps you in this endless cycle of needing additional approvals, bleeding both precious time and money.
This brings us right to cause number 4, which the data points to as one of the most underestimated causes. We're talking about poor coordination and slow decision-making. Guys, this is the silent killer of the project calendar. Unlike a massive thunderstorm or a crane collapsing, poor coordination doesn't make a loud noise. It just silently bleeds the calendar dry, day by excruciating day.
Let me paint a picture of this maddening waiting game for you. The contractor is out there baking in the hot sun, but they have to stop work because they're waiting on the consultant to approve a relatively minor change. The consultant, meanwhile, is sitting at a desk waiting on the client to officially sign off. And just like that, heavy bureaucracy completely halts progress. Things start moving at the speed of curing concrete. A really simple decision that should take maybe a quick phone call and 2 days to resolve ends up delaying the entire project by several weeks. All the while, the clock is loudly ticking on that 12-month mirage.
And that forces a major pivot over to cause number 5. The golden rule you got to remember here is, without resources, even the best schedule fails. You can have the most gorgeous, beautifully color-coded paper schedule hanging up in your site office, but frankly, that paper means absolutely nothing if the physical resources aren't showing up at the front gate.
We are talking about material, equipment, and supply chain problems. Just picture the devastating reality of a site that is completely frozen in its tracks. You've got a severe lack of cement and steel holding up your structural framing. You're dealing with crippling import delays, unexpected equipment breakdowns, sudden diesel shortages, and massive transportation bottlenecks. Your site basically turns into a ghost town, not because people don't want to work, but because of a complete lack of the physical means to actually build.
So, what's the true fallout of these 5 massive delays? Well, first, you have the direct impacts. This means spiraling extra project costs and massively reduced overall profit. But arguably way worse is the collateral damage. We're talking about incredibly bitter contractual disputes and a total, permanent loss of client trust. A delay doesn't just lose you a few weeks of time. It actively destroys the financial and professional foundation of your contracting business.
Okay, enough doom and gloom. We aren't just going to leave you with the bad news. Let's shift gears into some practical solutions. Consider this your personal PM field guide, a quick mental checklist of early warning signs derived from all those failing project examples we just looked at. Look, if you see a total lack of upfront risk assessment, or you start noticing little delays creeping into those IPC approvals, watch out. If the contractor seems perpetually stuck waiting on the consultant, or if an aggressive, unrealistic contract duration was signed at the very kickoff, alarm bells should be ringing loudly in your head immediately.
To combat this, you need really concrete mitigation steps to prevent that 12-month mirage from happening on your watch. You have got to enforce strict planning from day 0. Fiercely protect your cash flow. Ensure absolutely airtight coordination between all the different parties. Above all, you have to force fast decisions to beat back that suffocating bureaucracy and execute proactive, strong resource management.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how you put those steps into action out in the real world. This daily resource tracking framework is a game changer. It gives junior and senior PMs alike a really clear strategy for daily site monitoring. So if the critical resource is cash, your primary risk is delayed IPCs, which means your strategy must be strong cash flow management. For cement and steel, the big risk is import delays, so you mitigate that with advanced resource planning. And for equipment, you counter fuel shortages and random breakdowns with proactive maintenance schedules. Ultimately, it's all about staying 3 steps ahead of the chaos.
So we've walked the site, we've seen the massive pitfalls, and we've built out our mitigation plan. Now, I want to toss it over to you with the final, provocative question posed by our source material. Which of these 5 causes actually delays your projects the most? Is it the unrealistic planning, the paralyzing cash flow crisis, the endless design changes, the poor coordination, or those major supply chain failures? Really reflect on your own site management experiences here. Understanding your real root cause is the absolutely critical first step to making sure your next 12-month project actually finishes in 12 months. Keep analyzing, keep planning ahead, and we will see you in the next explainer.